Can everybody see my screen? Good. Cool. All right. Well, if you are here to talk about the Critical Language Scholarship, you are in the right place. Who we are, so my name is Heidi Bretz. I use she, her pronouns, and I work with the National Fellowships and Scholar Programs team here at USC. And what we do is we help wonderful people like you apply for wonderful opportunities like the Critical Language Scholarship. Fun fact, I'm also a Critical Language Scholarship alum myself, which is why I kind of harp a little bit on the importance of keeping up your language learning. I did go for Arabic. Now I can say about maybe 5 phrases. So making sure that you have a good way to continue your Arabic study or whichever language you're choosing, very good, but happy to share from my personal experience about that. And we also have Maeve Smith joining us, who is a more recent CLS alum. Maeve, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Maeve. I'm a senior political science major here, and I went abroad in summer 2022 to Azerbaijan to study Azerbaijani.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll ask you, Maeve, about halfway through to share a little bit more about your experience, and of course, to invite you all to ask questions from someone who has been there, done that, and has the inside scoop. So, what we have today is we're going to have a little icebreaker. We're going to go over CLS as a program really quickly, and then we're going to spend a lot of our time on what makes a competitive application. So thinking about things to highlight, ways to kind of talk about your own experiences that make you a competitive applicant. And then we're going to do some writing exercises that will help you to think more deeply about some of the things that you'll be including in your application. So if you want to throw in the chat, I'm curious, what languages are you most interested in studying as it pertains to CLS? All right, okay, awesome. We have Chinese, Portuguese, Turkish, awesome. Portuguese, Arabic, and Hindi. You're going to be busy. Portuguese, awesome. Yeah, Portuguese is one that's really gotten a lot of interest lately. Indonesian, Arabic, or Hindi. Awesome. Portuguese. Very nice. Awesome. Well, great. You're in the right place. Those are all languages that CLS does offer. So, spoiler alert, CLS relates to all of those. So, very excited to talk to you more about these languages and to talk to you about preparing your CLS application. I would also throw on your radar. I know we're going to talk about CLS a lot today, but I'm going to put Boren on your radar, Boren. That's another language learning fellowship. So if you're planning on going abroad, not just for a summer, but maybe for a longer period of time in the future, then Boren is a great way to capitalize on that language learning. They offer funding for critical need languages, no minimum experience needed for up to for 6 months to a year, basically, and they offer up to $25,000. So that's a really great opportunity if you're thinking of studying abroad, maybe for CLS first or as a part of your language learning journey, and then Boren potentially later. So just so you know, that is another way that you can get abroad and get paid to learn languages. So CLS overview. A lot of information on this slide, but we're going to go through it fairly quickly. I'm hoping that all of you have at least had a chance to look at the Critical Language Scholarship website. If you have not, if you have not yet looked at that website, do know that it is an 8 to 10 fully funded language intensive summer program. So like I said in the beginning, the funding is the program, and the program is the funding. This is not something where you're applying for funding to go and then do something else. CLS is all encompassing. So it is 8 to 10 weeks of language learning abroad, and you can study one of 13 critical need languages. So some of those languages do have previous experience requirements, many of them do not. New this year for Chinese, they actually have reduced the language requirement to 1 year or equivalent of study. So all of these 2 year, 1 year, those are college level courses, so the equivalent of 2 years of study or 1 year of study. And note that I did say or equivalent. So if you're a heritage speaker, if you have had prior experience with the language, maybe at the high school level or you're self-taught, they're looking for the equivalent experience of what you would learn in 1 or 2 years of a high school level language class. And that is something that you self-report at the start of your application, and then they will test you later. So make sure that you are accurately reporting that. And that is by the program start. So if you're not if you don't have your year of Arabic quite yet, but you're going to have it in May, that is the 1 year of Arabic. So 2 years of study is still required for Japanese. 1 year of study is required to apply for Arabic, Chinese, Korean, or Russian. Those are a little bit more commonly taught, so they do ask you to come in with a little bit of that background knowledge. And then no previous experience required is the rest of the languages. So Azerbaijani, Hindi, Indonesian, Persian, Portuguese, Swahili, Turkish, and Urdu. So if you are thinking of any of those languages, you don't have to have previous experience, but you should have, for all of these, kind of a compelling and like sensical reason for why you'd want to study these languages. So what does the application entail? This application is actually kind of deceptively short. When I talk to students, they're like, oh, really, that's it? That's all I have to write? And really CLS is more about writing, like being really concise with your writing, figuring out kind of what is going to be your best bet. And Eli, so your hand is raised. Yes.
Oh, I just wanted to ask if you're going to address CLS Spark at all tonight.
Yes, we sure can talk about CLS Spark. So that is for, so how many of you, show of hands, are interested in CLS Spark? Okay, I know we have at least a couple. Okay, a couple participants, awesome. So CLS Spark is a program that is part of CLS. It's actually a newer offering. It's been over the past couple of years they have introduced it, and it is complete beginner instruction in those languages that require a little bit more study. So they offer Arabic, Chinese, and Russian specifically. The CLS Spark is a virtual program. It still takes place over the summer, but it is 8 to 10 weeks of virtual language study in either Arabic, Chinese, or Russian. For that, they do ask a couple of different questions. I'll show you on the website where you can find the information for what questions they're asking, what kind of things they're looking for from you. But with CLS Spark, it's intended for folks who aren't otherwise able to get the language learning needed for some of those higher level required languages. So if you, for example, are here at USC, we do offer Chinese, Arabic, and Russian courses. So what you'll be talking about is like why specifically you haven't been able to maybe take advantage of those, or what other obstacles have kind of come up in your way of working into your schedule. I know a lot of you are like IB majors and it's just nearly impossible, or you have family commitments or jobs or things like that. But that's what they'll be asking about is why is a language learning online language learning program going to be the best fit for you? And so they ask you to talk a little bit more about that. For the CLS program, like without Spark, just CLS, is a in-person language learning program. Thank you very much. Did that answer your question? Awesome. Okay, yeah, feel free to interrupt me and ask more questions as I go through this information. Again, this is a pretty interactive workshop, so feel free to ask away. So with the application requirements, and again, this will vary a little bit between CLS and CLS Spark. Excuse me. There are a couple of short answer questions that are all about 300 words long, and then one personal statement, which is 500 words long. So that's not a lot of writing. I can't tell you like page counts, but maybe 2 pages, 3 at max. I don't even know if it's that much. But basically, they are looking for you to really concisely and clearly explain why you're interested in this language, what you are going to do to continue your language learning, what you have experienced in the past, or how you have prepared yourself for this program, and more about that cultural ambassadorship, which is so key to many of these Department of State programs. So what are you going to do to share your American culture abroad? And what are you going to do to talk to your home community back here in the US about your host culture when you come back? They do also require a transcript. Unofficial is fine. And there actually is no letter of recommendation for this. Many scholarships do ask for a letter of recommendation. CLS does not. The deadline is coming up on November 14th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So just note that that's kind of a funky time. I'm not quite sure why they picked 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, but definitely plan to submit your application in advance of that so that you don't run into any technical glitches or the portal getting slow or anything like that. Save yourself some stress. So what are the benefits? So again, this is a fully funded program that includes all of your excursions, your meals, your housing, your language instruction, and health insurance. So you will have all of that covered as part of the program. What's not included is if you have not yet gotten a passport or you need to get it renewed, any fees related to that, and then pre-travel healthcare fees. So if you need to get shots or things like that. But I would check with the student healthcare center. You may be able to get some of those vaccines at low or no cost, but check with the student health center. And again, it'll depend where you're traveling to as to what kinds of medical care you might have to look into beforehand. It does include academic credit through Bryn Mawr College. I believe it is 6 credit hours of language study that you can transfer back to USC. Up to 3 years of non-competitive eligibility. So if you haven't heard of that, basically what it is it is a special hiring authority that gives you a leg up when interviewing for government jobs. So if you're thinking of going into government work, if you are a CLS participant, you'll get up to 3 years of a special hiring authority that makes it much, much, much easier. You still have to be qualified, but it makes the process a little bit smoother for you. And then, of course, access to the alumni network. Like I said, I did CLS and I'm still getting alumni emails. There are events that they hold, career fairs, different networking things. So lots of opportunities to keep engaging even after you've concluded your time with CLS. So what is CLS? CLS is not a vacation. It is a very intensive program. So do know that it is something that is pretty scheduled. Excuse me. And you will be expected to spend about 15 hours per week in class, plus homework about the equivalent amount of time, and then excursions on the weekends. So just know that it's not going to be a type of program where you can decide to like go off and visit another country or visit another part of the country during your stay. It is very structured, which is really nice because you don't have to think about any of that. You just get to arrive and learn languages. So just know to expect that. It's not a regular study abroad. So this is exclusive language and culture focus. So you won't be taking other classes. There may be some kind of cultural experiences with your program where you learn, for example, if you're learning Arabic, you can learn some dialect, or they have clubs, so you can learn dancing or music or calligraphy or something that is related to the language that you're studying. But it is exclusively culture and language learning. There is no independent travel really before, during, or after the program. Everything is with this cohort. Classmates are other US students, so you will be in classes with students from around the US. Mentors and instructors are local to wherever you're studying your language. So what is CLS? So CLS is not a vacation, it's not study abroad, it's intensive. So it will be the equivalent of 1 year of academic study in about 2 to 3 months. So as you can imagine, you're going to be studying a lot. So just be prepared for that. It will include extracurricular activities and excursions. I know when I went to Tunisia, we traveled around every weekend to different parts of the country, from like the north to south, east, west coast, desert, everywhere. And so that was a really great way to learn more about the country, but just know you will be traveling a lot. And again, there's not a ton of downtime. You will be living, if circumstances permit, with a host family. So just know that you're going into someone's home, they're hosting you. There may be children, they may be folks who are older, there may be single folks, like it just kind of depends, but there will be families. So just know that you're coming into a family, and know to expect that notions of privacy may be different, or you may be invited to hang out or go to weddings. I got to invite to a wedding at one point. So having that is a really special experience, but just know that that is something that's coming for you. And then finally, that you'll sign a language pledge at some point during your CLS experience. For those who are doing complete beginning, and maybe you can let me know, did you have to sign a language pledge, and at what point?
Yeah, I did have to sign a language pledge, but they gave people who had no language experiences 2 weeks before you had to do it.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. Yeah, so you get 2 weeks, and then you are signing a document that says you will, to the best of your ability, still speak exclusively in your target language. So again, Not to scare you away from this program. It's an amazing program, but just know that these things are part of the expectation, and academic rigor is one of the things that really attracts people to this program. So just be prepared to start speaking your language almost exclusively pretty soon after you get to your host country. It is cohorted, groups of up to 20 participants from around the US. So that's who you'll be in class with. Sometimes for the bigger groups that are more like 20 participants, they might divide you into smaller class sizes based on level or whatever kind of criteria they determine. Some of the programs that aren't quite as not really popular, but quite as well attended, there may be smaller groups of participants. So just know that the size can vary from probably about 5 to 7 all the way up to 20. So just thinking about that. And these will be other US students. And then again, that this is standalone. Transportation is typically directly to and from the host country, so not a lot of opportunity to travel outside of it. So just know that that's what you're getting into. And I think one of the reasons, and maybe you can let me know if you are a fellow introvert, but one of the reasons I kind of harp on how much people there are in this program, how many people there are, is just because I know as an introvert, that was one of the things that I struggled with a little bit in the program, was the fact that I was never alone. So again, when you think about, they ask you about what realistic challenges do you anticipate? If you're an introvert, that could be something that could be challenging for you, is being able to be around people basically 24/7 for 10 weeks. So Maeve, did you have that experience?
Yeah, definitely a bit. My experience was slightly impacted by COVID as well, in that my cohort was 8 people and we all shared a house together. And so there was truly no escaping people who could sometimes grow to get on your nerves, but at the end of the day, we were all there for the same reason, and we were able to work through any differences or frustrations, and you can always find some time to yourself.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. And then finally, CLS is fun. It is a really exciting, challenging, and very effective way of learning language. Because again, you get to go to these places that you might never travel to otherwise. You get to challenge your brain and your body when you're adjusting to completely new cultures, new languages, new ways of moving your mouth around to make the sounds that you need to communicate. And again, you're going to learn about a year or potentially even a little bit more equivalent language in about 2 to 3 months. I know I started with no knowledge of Arabic at all. It was actually the last year that they let us do that, because they figured it'd be nice to not have to study the alphabet for 2 weeks before starting to really speak the language. So I went from not knowing the alphabet to intermediate speaking, reading, and writing proficiency in the course of about 8 weeks. So it definitely is effective. So if you're looking for a way to really jumpstart your language learning, CLS is for you. But again, you don't have to take my word for it. Maeve, I'm going to ask you to kind of come up and share a little bit about your experience, how you heard about CLS, what the experience was like for you, why you picked Azerbaijan and Azerbaijani, and then what you've been doing since then.
Yeah, of course. So I really love talking about my experiences. And I'll start off by saying I'm also a peer mentor with the Office of National Fellowship. So if any of you guys want to pick my brain more in depth after this, feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to meet up and get a coffee and talk about applications or the experience. But I guess jumping right into it, I want to give a little bit of context about my country of Azerbaijan, because I didn't even know where Azerbaijan was like 2.5 years ago. It's a really small country. It's right between Russia and Iran, and the language is very similarly related to Turkish. But my journey with Azerbaijani didn't initially start when I applied to CLS, because in full transparency, I actually applied as a freshman for CLS Portuguese and I was rejected. I still was really drawn to the CLS program, but I realized that my first year applying, I didn't really have that concrete reason why Portuguese was going to be important to my study. I struggled to make that connection. And then so over the next year, I spent a lot more time studying my area of focus, which is political science, and I got a lot more into national security, international affairs, and kind of conflict studies. And I learned a lot about the Nagorno-Karabakh War, which is an ongoing conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And so then when the time came around and I found out that Azerbaijani was also a language that's offered by CLS, that's the one I chose to apply to. Some of my personal statement focused around my personal interest in the conflict and how I was interested in further researching that in the future. And obviously that worked out for me. So I am so fortunate to have been selected to CLS. I think it was a really foundational experience for me and kind of jump-started me to get where I am now. But just to kind of walk you guys through my experience, I found out that I was selected in March. And then the first week of June, I was on a plane to Azerbaijan. All of my cohort mates got flown out to DC, and then we took the flight over to Germany, and then we took a flight from Germany to Azerbaijan. And then because of COVID, like I mentioned, we were all living together. This wouldn't be the same for you guys as they're planning the program now. At least that's my understanding. You would stay with host families. But I was living in central Baku. And essentially what I did was every day I went to a local university. For me, that was Azerbaijan University of Languages, which is a college solely focused on language learning in Azerbaijan. And there was a small group of tutors there. We were all sorted into a beginner, an intermediate, or an advanced group, and we spent every day with other people in our group learning. And I think I was there from 8 a.m. to 2 every day. And my day was sorted into reading, writing, speaking. And then once a week, I met privately with one of the instructors for private tutoring. Another really cool part of the program is that they will pair you with what they call a language partner, which is somebody in the community. They try and pair you with someone your age, someone with common interests if they're available. And their job is to take you out to explore the country and do that 4 hours a week. And so that's something I did as well. My language partner was named Narai. She was wonderful. I came in to CLS with 0 Azerbaijani proficiency, no related languages. I didn't speak Turkish or Russian. And I left like Heidi at a middle intermediate level. I had never experienced language gains like that in my life. I've never even considered myself very talented at language learning, but because of the intensity of the program, it's a little bit of a do or die moment, but it was definitely for the better. I learned a whole lot. At the end of my internship, I was actually, not internship, that's where I'm getting. At the end of my scholarship period, I was actually able to transition into a virtual internship with the Department of State, specifically the Bureau of Cultural and Educational Affairs, which administers CLS. So I got to see some of the other side of it. I did that for 9 months. And then I transitioned into an internship with the FBI for this following summer. And I'll be transitioning to full-time work following graduation, barring any other potential fellowship acceptances. So overall, CLS really kickstarted things for me. It allowed me to kind of demonstrate my outgoingness and my willingness to like put myself in those kind of uncomfortable situations and be successful. And I also got to use my non-competitive hiring eligibility to get the job that I'm in now. So I would 10 out of 10 recommend it. And if you guys have any questions, I'm obviously more than happy to answer honestly.
So, Maeve, what did you think was going to be the most challenging thing for you, and what ended up being the most challenging thing for you?
Yeah, what I wrote in my essay was that I was really intimidated by going in with no language proficiency. On campus, I'm very involved with different public speaking organizations, mock trial, debate, student government. So I like to talk. And I was definitely nervous about having to sign a language pledge that kind of barred me from communicating with people to the level that I would want to. But for me, the most challenging part actually probably ended up being the interpersonal relationships with my cohort mates, which I was not expecting. Again, we were able to work through things, but because it is such a stressful situation and because you are together all of the time, sometimes tensions can run high because everybody's really stressed out.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense, especially if you're all living in one house together. Like, ooh, at least I had my own room, so that was good. What have you been doing to kind of keep up your Azerbaijani since you've gotten back?
Yeah, so it's something that I do struggle with because it's not a popularly spoken language in the United States. It's not offered here at the University of South Carolina, but I have kept in contact with several of my cohort mates over the past year plus. We'll talk to each other in Azerbaijani a little bit. And also something that I recently started doing is actually ChatGPT speaks Azerbaijani, and so you can type back and forth and kind of hold conversations. And so that's kind of a cool modern tool I've been learning to use.
There you go. You never know where AI will show up these days. Uh, yeah. I guess what was something that really helped you when you were putting together your application?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it. Like, I think the difference between my first application, which ended in a rejection, and my second application, which ended in acceptance, was having a central theme that was going to be running through my application and understanding how that this was actually going to fit into my future. My first application focused much more on I want to study abroad and I want to gain cultural competency, but it was much less focused on why going to Brazil was going to do that, or why Brazil specifically was important to me. In my second application, I already had some prior knowledge of what was going on in Azerbaijan, and so I could make that connection a lot more easily. And I'd also developed a more niche interest in national security issues, which is a main mission of CLS. And I've also been able to continue on what I said I was going to do in my application. And so I researched the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict now, and I get to use some of my language skills for that as well.
Thank you. And I will let y'all know, like, I said I was gonna like work for the government or the UN or something, and I'm not. So if you have a plan and you're not quite sure if it's gonna work out, or you are sure and life happens, just know that CLS is not gonna like chase you down and ask for their money back. So that might help give you a little more confidence if you're kind of worried about putting a plan out there in an essay.
That was
Yeah.
a huge piece of advice I received from the office when I applied. My personal statement says that I was going to go to the National Security Law program at Georgetown. I'm not doing that. They don't care. It's just about kind of building a narrative and explaining why they should invest in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that I think, and maybe you can tell people that this was your experience or not. But one of the things that I think helps with working with our team is that we'll help you build that narrative. But when we talk about building a narrative, it's not like you're like making up a story. It's you're taking all of these different pieces and presenting them in a way that like makes sense as to why you're pursuing this language at this time in your studies and how it's going to help you going forward. So that's kind of what we help you do, is to frame that narrative so that it makes sense and is really clear to CLS and the CLS selection committee why you're doing what you're doing and why they should fund you.
Yeah, I would definitely agree that that's my experience. They help me kind of find that central focus. And while I'm not pursuing national security law, I am working in national security. So that central theme kind of runs, even if you're not sticking 100% to your original plan.
Yeah. Any questions from y'all? You can throw them in the chat or you can unmute yourself.
Do you have any suggestions? Oh, you can go ahead.
I was wondering, maybe I missed it. Did you cover how many weeks each language is? Like, I'm kind of in a predicament.
So it kind of varies a little bit. It's 8 to 10 weeks about per program. Yeah.
When are you told like how long it is?
So you'll be able to, so if you want to get an idea of the dates, you can go ahead and check on the dates from the last year's program. So if you go to each of the individual like programs pages, it can show you like, oh, in 2023 it was July 1st through August 10th or whatever it would be. I think they give you, do you remember when you got exact dates, Maeve?
I got semi-finalist around January. I got finalist in March, and then I didn't get final dates until actually like mid to end of April, and I was on a plane first week of June.
Do the dates vary? I'm just wondering because I do want to apply, but a little bit about myself. I'm active duty, so using this. I mean, I would take all the advice that you just gave and probably just apply it. But which kind of coincides with what I'm trying to do in the military. But I also have a mandatory training that I have to attend. That's about a month. So I'm not sure I'm sure like on the military side, they will push my training, but I'm trying to see, I don't know if I'll be able to do a full 10 weeks, maybe 8 weeks would probably be the max. So I'm
Yeah.
Yeah, I
like,
mean, I can't give you anything concrete, to be honest, but I will be transparent. One of my closest friends in the program, he was in the Marines. His training was also pushed back as a result of the program. My experience is that they will not shorten the program, but that a lot of parts of the military will kind of make exceptions because this is a national security focused program. They view it as kind of an asset for the military to have people who complete the program. So they're definitely open to like conversations once you've gotten accepted into the program, is kind of what I've heard from my friend.
do you know if he was active or he was reserve?
So he had just graduated the Naval Academy. He was waiting to go to pilot school.
Okay, so his situation is a little bit different.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little bit
I'd like
different.
more information on my side to see, but I'll still apply and see if I
Yeah.
were accepted.
So what I would say is with this fellowship and a lot of other ones that are through the Department of State, they're usually pretty like easy to get a hold of. So I would email them. So if you go on the website under the contact us section, you can find like different emails for what kind of question you have. But I would go ahead and start that conversation. Definitely still apply. But starting that conversation with both CLS and any commanding officers that you need to talk with would be a good thing to start looking at now. And are you ROTC by any chance or no?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Oh, you are. Okay, then what I might also recommend is checking into Project Go. So Project GO, it stands for Global Officer. And there's actually Ryan Lower, who's another one of our FPMs, our fellowship peer mentors. And he's on that link that I sent. And he actually did Project Go twice for Arabic. So you can talk to him about his experience, but specifically for ROTC like people. And those, they have both summer programs. They also have, I think, other like lengths of program, domestic and international. So I would check in on that.
Okay, they just posted about it today,
There you
actually. Is it Project Global Officer?
Global Officer. Mm-hmm.
That's what it's called? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's very different then from this.
It's a different program, but it's actually kind of similar in structure a little bit. In terms of like they have kind of similar summer program options where it's like a cohorted summer program experience, but we'd have to delve in a little bit more to the specific program you're looking at, the specific language. And I'd probably encourage you to talk with Ryan about like what his experience was. I know he applied. I think he applied for both.
Okay, because the person that is the point of contact is June. Wait, I don't want to mispronounce the name, but Moon is the last name, is the assistant professor in Project Go, Korean program director. I'm not sure if the name
Here?
sounds. Department of Modern and Classic Languages.
Okay. At USC?
Probably not. No, it says
Okay.
George University.
Yeah. Yeah. So Project Go, they have different kind of, you can either do a domestic program at one of the universities they offer. They have like a whole like catalog of programs that you can look at, or they also have international ones in that catalog. So I think that would be something where you and I should talk. And it'd be great to set an appointment with me, which you can do on Navigate. You're an undergrad, right?
I'm a graduate student.
Graduate student? Okay, then I will send you an email. Or if you email me, I'll email you back with the link that you can use to.
What is your email? Because I just followed the link that I'll just thank you.
No worries. And you can talk to either myself or if you go on our website, you can also get the link to meet with Matt Klopfenstein, who is our graduate student advisor, who can also help you with CLS. So
thank you.
I just put my email in the chat. Okay. Yeah, but as you can see, like there are many different kinds of programs that you can do, and sometimes you can apply for more than one. Depending on the program, you could win more than one. Project Go and CLS probably wouldn't be compatible, but like for instance, if you were to win like Gilman and Freeman Asia, those are compatible. So again, that's all
Okay.
about kind of having conversations with our team to see what might be the best fit for you.
Yeah, because I haven't even read like what was posted. I was like, well, I have this, this meeting this afternoon, so I'll wait.
Well, good for you. I'm glad you're here and glad people are sharing. Okay, and then I want to return to Abigail's question about today's sociopolitical climate. I'm sure safety is a growing concern for a lot of us. Indeed. Can we touch on that a bit? Well, I will say that traveling with the Department of State is probably one of the safest ways you can travel. They do take good care of the folks that are on their cohorts. They're not going to send you somewhere that is completely unsafe for US citizens. And they do, I believe, security briefings and things like that. Maeve, you've more recently been. So can you tell us about kind of your experience, especially being in a country that's has some areas that are in active conflict?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. When I told my parents I was doing CLS, they were not pleased. They were very scared of the entire thing. I remember my dad prepped like a printed out list of 20 questions he had about like the safety in the country that he made me answer before I left, because Azerbaijan is in an active conflict. When you go, you enroll in something called the STEP program, which is, I forget what it stands for, but essentially you get
Smart
text alerts
Traveler.
run by the US Department of State. They're also, they're not looking to have any of the students that they brought over there in danger. Because of the situation I was in, there was talk in the last week or so of my program of evacuation, but we ended up just naturally closing the program before that became a real concern. But they are actively watching the sociopolitical situations to ensure that you will be pulled out if there is any danger. And also keep in mind, with several of the countries CLS deals with, because of conflict in the predominant language speaking countries, so Russian is a big example, you won't go to Russia through CLS. You would go to Georgia or Uzbekistan or another bordering country that has a lot of Russian speakers, just because of that safety aspect.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question. Again, like the State Department is very, very aware of all of these different potential safety risks, and they are, of course, taking steps to make sure that you are in the best possible situation within that country, and that that you'll return safe and sound. Thank you. Awesome.
I just had a couple questions. So first, like, do you have any suggestions? Like, I'm a freshman, I'm not really sure what career path I want yet. Do you have any suggestions for like handling the application and like the kind of drive part
Sure.
with that?
Yeah, Maeve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I did apply as a freshman. The thing I found the most challenge with applying as a freshman was that I didn't really have like involvement on campus to talk about yet, or like specific courses that kind of related to my interests. But I do think it is kind of about finding that central theme. And even if you're not sure exactly what you want to do in the future, picking a future that interests you and kind of writing that narrative and connecting that all together. That would be my recommendation, at least.
Cool. And then my second question was, so I'm doing Spark, or applying to Spark, which is a virtual program. So would I be able to do something else during the summer, like as long as it didn't conflict like with the times I had classes?
So that would be something, I believe that the Spark classes, I believe there are some synchronous parts, so you'd want to make sure that you are available during those times, and making sure that you have enough time to do your homework and to do everything. But like if you are, I don't know, if you want to take a weekend trip, I'm not sure how that would necessarily, I don't think that would necessarily conflict, as long as you're leaving that time for the classes that you would need to have. But I'd need to look a little bit again at the program to be like 100% confident.
Cool.
Yeah, I wouldn't like plan to be in a completely other country or to like go on vacation for 3 weeks, but within reason. And then question from the chat was a freshman about submitting transcript. They do know that you may not have grades yet. You still do need to submit an unofficial transcript, which you can print out from your Self-Service Carolina portal, but they will, if you're, I'm not sure if it's at the semifinalist stage that they ask for it or at the finalist stage, but they would ask for your grades kind of before you completely like are accepted onto the program. But that would come in after your fall semester. Laura, I see your hand is raised.
So with the transcripts and everything, so I'm a grad student and I'm in the social work department and I'll graduate in May. So one, I just wanted to double check that I can still apply as someone that won't be in school next fall.
Yeah.
And then, okay, awesome. And then, will they want my transcripts for just grad school or undergraduate as well? Because I do have like a poli-sci minor, which isn't much, but like, I don't know if they like want both or.
I would have to double check on that if they want both or not.
Okay.
I think it depends on well, I just need to double check because I'm not sure of that off the top of my head.
Okay, awesome.
But it should be under the eligibility requirements, so I'll have to look at that. But yes, that is a great point. People who are planning to graduate, as long as you are enrolled as a student at the time of application, so on November 14th, if you are enrolled as a degree-seeking student in a full-time program, whether that be bachelor's, master's, JD, PhD, you're still eligible for CLS regardless of whether or not you'll have graduated by that time. And so that's another great thing to point out for CLS is you can actually do it potentially multiple times. Not everyone does, or everyone who applies again is accepted, but sometimes folks will plan to do like several iterations of CLS to deepen that language learning. And so if you are graduating or you're going to graduate school, like you can maybe potentially continue your CLS journey that way. And also for those of you who are applying to Spark, if you are accepted, you're an automatic semifinalist for the next year's in-person program. Maeve, did you have anything to add?
Nothing super specific, just that, yeah, even if you're in graduate school, that's definitely not uncommon. My program was 50-50. Two of my closest program mates were in their 30s. Anybody who's enrolled in any kind of degree program is eligible. So that's a really cool aspect about it.
And I was also going to say, I know you mentioned like having a political science minor. This is open to anyone in any major. So I know I had people in my cohort who had fashion design as a major, or history or chemistry. And so they're looking for the cohorts that they select to really represent the diversity of the US, which includes diversity of majors, diversity of geographic origins, all those different ways that like Americans can be. They want to see that reflected in the program itself. So definitely lean into that. And if you have a great reason for studying Azerbaijani because of its, I don't know, you're interested in like water conservation or something, and that's your major, like that's perfectly fine and even encouraged and acceptable. So, okay. Other questions?
I actually did just think of another question.
Yeah.
And it's good to know about the like diversity part of it. So one of the so I know Portuguese is probably one of those languages that like gets a lot of applications for because it's so similar to other languages. Like that's one of the reasons I'm interested is because I'm also very interested in Spanish. Would, I guess in terms of like making our applications stand out or things that could harm the applications potentially, like I'm interested in Princeton in South America, like that program. So is it okay to like mention other programs that we're hoping that this might be a stepping stone to, or is that like not as like if they want us to like maybe go more into the government type jobs or something? Like how does that work?
No, I think it's perfectly fine to mention Princeton Asia, especially, or Princeton Asia. I'm more used to that program. So Princeton South America, which I believe is reopening this year. So
yes, that's what I've heard. I have a contact at Princeton Asia who's telling me about Princeton Latin America. So like I was very curious about it once he told me about it.
Right. So I would say that's a great way to kind of plug it into like how you'll continue your language learning. So saying that you're going to do that, or you're going to do Fulbright or something in the future, or do Boren, like that's a good thing to mention. Um, yeah, because are you doing it instead of or in addition to?
I would like to do it in addition to, like, are you talking about
Then yeah, perfectly.
in South America? Because so Princeton and so the South America one, they require a little bit of language knowledge, whereas the other ones like Africa and Asia don't. But I just feel like in terms of social work, Latin America may be
Yeah.
more applicable to the work I want to do. So like
Mhm.
that's why I'm interested in it, but I can't really do it without the language background, which is
Right.
why it's like really interested me.
Mhm. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great reason for wanting to study Portuguese. And again, and this will kind of flow naturally into the like next part of the presentation, but really it's all about building the case for like why this program, why this language, and why now is it the best time for you to do it, and why is CLS the best program for you. So as you're thinking about your application, thinking about those reasons of like, well, why did you choose Portuguese? Is it because you, I don't know, really like capoeira? Maybe. And maybe that's a really interesting like scholarly interest for you, and you're going to go on to become like a capoeira expert, and you need to know Portuguese to do that. That's great. But if you're just saying I want to sit on the beach in Brazil, like that's not a great reason to try and go and study Portuguese. So you want to think about what are your reasons for studying this language? How does it connect to what you are interested in doing? Whether that's something that's defined or something that is kind of nebulous, like learning more about national security, learning more about how Chinese relates to computer science, those types of things, but really building that case for like how it fits in with what you're hoping to do next. Why is this your next logical step?
Yeah, I would just add my one recommendation. I think that they would love to hear about your interest in Princeton in South Africa.
Yeah.
But I would say my caveat is tell them that you are going to come back to the United States eventually. That's going to be important to them.
Yeah, fair enough.
Awesome, thank you. That's my plan. But yeah, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, awesome. And Jared, to your question, I don't think for CLS they have statistics for each language. I will say that the ones that are more popular, especially lately, like Korean, like blasted through the roof. Everyone wants to go and study Korean. So Korean's a popular one. Portuguese is more popular. Arabic, and then the rest of them are kind of in the middle of the pack. And then some of the lower ones would be like Indonesian, Turkish, Azerbaijani, some of the ones that aren't as widely known or taught. So it just kind of depends. And overall, the like success rate of applications is about 1 in 10. So that will vary pretty widely depending on kind of, again, your argument for why they should invest in you. So if you're building a strong argument, you're not just saying, oh, I loved Squid Game, I want to go study Korean. Like, okay, but that's not quite enough. So talking more about what your specific interest is in that language, in that region, and how you're going to continue that language study is what's going to make your application stand out. All right, so I think that's a good transition point to crafting a strong application. Let me share my screen again. Yes.
Real quick
ahead.
on the question in the chat about selectivity for CLS Spark.
yes.
CLS Spark has a higher selectivity rate, to my
Mm.
knowledge, than
Yeah.
CLS. I think it's closer to a third of applicants get into CLS Spark.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and CLS Spark again is all about talking about why this particular what do you call it, virtual opportunity is the right fit for you at this time, and how it's going to help you to propel your language learning forward.
So just adding on to that, so I know a big part of CLS Spark is that it's targeted at people who couldn't take the language. So they have an essay specifically about like the barriers to the language. So obviously I'll be talking about that there, but should I like tie that into my other essays? Or is it okay if I more stay on topic for those and just?
So I would say, since they give you a whole question to talk about what's been challenging as you've tried to engage with language learning, that you can reference it within your other short answer questions, but I wouldn't focus on it since you have a whole space to focus on it.
Awesome.
For the application. Yeah, and I'm happy to read through any of your application materials, and I will let you know I am going to be taking some time off at the end of this month and the beginning of next. So I will be gone for a couple of weeks, but you can either talk with me, or if I am unavailable, you can meet with my supervisor, Jen Bess. She's the director of National Fellowships, is a really great resource for this as well. But also for grad students, you meet with Matt Kloppenstein. Really, any of our advisors are able to give you feedback on your essay. Just Jen and Matt will probably be the most familiar with the CLS application after myself. So if you're looking to get some feedback, make sure that you are sending those out with enough time for you to reincorporate the feedback back into your application as well. So I would probably get in touch with us at the latest, at least a week before the application is due.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And so again, just tips from us for crafting a strong application is think about the story you want to tell. Again, about creating that narrative, talking about kind of how you see this being your next logical step. Critically thinking about your past, your present, and future. What has sparked this interest for you in the past? How is it showing up, and how are you engaging with this interest now? And how do you see that happening and continuing to happen in the future? Something that can be hard for folks is this is the time to brag a little bit about yourself. So if it helps, think about what would a best friend or a parent or a really supportive teacher say about you, and kind of using that as a way to talk more about your strengths, more about your interests, about the skills and experiences that you bring to this program. And that's something that we can help with as advisors too, is to help kind of talk that through with you. And we can point out like, hey, you talked about how you're in ROTC and you're active military. That's a really great example of your leadership and your perseverance and your resilience. Like, talk about that in your application. So we can help you to kind of figure out what that might look like for you. Considering the overall message you want to convey, like Maeve said, she kind of started off with her first application being more like, oh, a little bit more general. Oh, I want to study abroad for this experience, not really considering how it was going to connect to things later down the line. Whereas the second essay had more focus on like, oh, I'm interested in national security. This is the language that's really important for national security. This is how I hope to use that. So really thinking about telling that story and figuring out what message you want to put forward. Just as kind of a grammatical thing, make sure you're using active, not passive voice. So instead of saying like, I was granted a scholarship, say like, I received a scholarship, I did this, I did that, and make yourself the main character in your own essays. And of course, our team will help you to rewrite anything if you end up into passive voice. Grammar, syntax, and punctuation do all matter, but of course they're not the be all end all. The story is really what is the most important, but do please proofread your essays before you hit that submit button. And then finally, be authentic. Don't tell us what you think that we want to hear, like kind of this trying to be this perfect applicant. There is no one perfect applicant for any program. And so really thinking about like, what is the story that you're telling? What are the things that make you unique and you interested in this language? So if you're not really interested in capoeira and you want to go study in Brazil, you don't have to talk about that. You don't have to try and like twist yourself into knots to be something that you think they're looking for, because really they are looking for folks that will represent the diversity of the United States in all of its iterations and forms. They're looking for people who are really interested in the language and who have that commitment to maintaining it and to engaging with folks who are different from themselves and to really being good cultural ambassadors. So tell us that and how that works and looks for you. So from CLS itself, they suggest making sure that you are focusing on how, why, and like kind of how this all fits together. So they want to hear from you how CLS connects to your future career. What's your field of study? Can you relate it to your language? What are your career goals? It says be specific, again, within like however specific you are in this moment. So that can be something like, oh, I want to work in national security, or oh, I'm really interested in exploring what it might be like to be a language teacher. Great. Pick a path and talk about it. Again, they're not going to come after you and ask for their money back, or else I would have had to pay them back a way long time ago. So how will you use your acquired cultural and language knowledge to contribute to your future field? Again, this could be an idea you have. Again, life happens, life will shift, but you really want to be thinking about how this could potentially connect to the things you see yourself doing in the future. And then why you should be selected. That sounds kind of scary, like why you, but really thinking about kind of what makes you unique, what distinguishes you from other applicants, what unique backgrounds or experiences do you bring to this program? Did you grow up in a really small town? Or were you part of a big city and you saw a lot of different languages being spoken around you? Are you a heritage speaker? Did you have like a study abroad experience that was really impactful for you, or some other type of kind of entry into this interest in language and culture? But really thinking about kind of who you are and what you care about, what matters to you, and how does that make you unique and uniquely interested in this language. What are some of your biggest achievements? And again, this can be academic, it can be personal, it can be professional. And think about yourself and like the ways that you've excelled and persevered. And that can be in a lot of different contexts. So for example, if you have worked to help support your family, if you've taken leadership positions in the organizations, if you in organizations that you're a part of, if you've like stepped out of your comfort zone, you're coming to college in a completely different state. Those are all things that will help prepare you for the CLS program. And so that will also tie into how you'll represent the US and share your culture abroad. And they have answered added another question this year that talks about, okay, so you're going to go and be a representative of the US abroad, you're going to share what your American life is like. But then again, like you're going to be bringing things back with you. How will you represent your host culture when you come back? What are you going to tell people about Azerbaijan or Brazil or India when you come back? How are you going to pay that forward? And then finally, how you will be a successful participant. So how have you made use of available resources to study your target language? This can include if you haven't really had a lot of exposure before. So if you've done Duolingo or Mango or one of those other language learning apps, or if you've been watching Chinese TV shows with subtitles on, things like that. If you've been trying to do tutoring or language partners or what have you. So how have you already made use of those available resources? And again, this is something I harp on, how will you maintain your language learning, and giving some specific ideas for that. And that's not only to demonstrate to CLS your seriousness of purpose, but also for yourself. Because like Maeve said too, it can be really hard to keep up the language once you come back. So having a plan for attending language tables, taking courses, hiring a tutor, starting Pimsleur, or whatever, like all of those things are going to help you to stay on track with your language learning goals too. How will you adapt to studying in a new environment? This is a very academically intensive program. What kind of skills do you bring to it that you'll be able to draw on when things get tough? And then finally, what will you anticipate will be your biggest challenge? Again, it might not be what you think. So thinking about that realistically. All right, so any questions? I know we have a few minutes left. We are at 7:02. Totally forgot what time it was for a minute. 7:02, so we have about half an hour to do some writing together, but I wanted to open up the floor again for questions. All right, who is the CLS advisor for USC? Me. So I will help. We have a couple of different folks who are listed as CLS advisors. So myself, Jen Best, and I believe Matt Klopfenstein are all listed. Yeah.
You might have said this at the beginning. Will you be sharing this recording with us? Because I'll have to jump off in a moment, but I don't want to miss more information.
Yes. So what I will do is after this session, probably tomorrow, I'll share the recording. I will share a link to our CLS Microsoft Teams channel, and that is where you can find more resources. Like I'm about to share a worksheet. You'll see that. You'll see a timeline for kind of what the competition looks like in terms of kind of what you should be doing to stay on track, former successful applications, sharing all of that before this. So yes, and maybe we are actually recording. I've got the little blinking light. So this will be recorded and shared out, and also share the PowerPoint presentation. and all of that. So with you and then with anyone who signed up who wasn't able to join us tonight.
I also had another question just about the
Sure.
like being there.
Mhm.
So how, so I have like a health thing, like a chronic health thing. So how does that work, like being in another country, like and living with a host family? Like how do you kind of, like I went abroad for like 2 weeks, but you know, that's 2 weeks. So like how how does that kind of like healthcare, like any of that work? Well, we're potentially abroad.
Yeah, so that would be something that you'd want to talk about with CLS directly. I think it would depend on which particular location you're going to, because of course they're going to send you to a location where you'll be able to stay safe and healthy the whole time. Um, yeah, I would contact CLS directly if that's going to like influence your choice of program, and make sure that everything is like you're able to get any medications you need, that you're able to have access to facilities that you would need to during the program. But they do, like I said, include health insurance, and that includes medical evacuation insurance for the program as well. So if for any reason you did need to be returned to the United States for treatment, they do have a mechanism for that. Um, and you can also look at drawing from my time in study abroad. There is the International Narcotics Control Board. That's INCB. Anyways, INCB. But you can look at that online, and it will actually tell you, give you some information as to whether or not the medications you're on are permitted in your country and how they're available, if there's like a different term for them, those types of things. Because I know, especially with like ADHD medication, antipsychotics, any type of like opiates, those tend to be restricted across international borders. So I would definitely do a little bit of research, and of course reach out to CLS about any concerns, and they can help talk you through it. That is something that they're aware of and are ready to respond to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to drop a link. Oh, I think I'm actually away from the link. But I'm going to drop a link in the chat that is to a worksheet that, again, you'll be able to access on the, once I add you to the team, the CLS team in Microsoft. So we have that. Okay. So this is a worksheet that I kind of made up. So again, take everything with a grain of salt, but this is basically to help you start thinking about what you might talk about with your CLS application. So basically it will kind of walk you through some of the things. So how CLS connects to your future career, why you should be selected, and how you'll be a successful participant. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen as well so folks can see that. There we go. Okay, so this is the worksheet that I have. And again, this is something I will send out afterwards as well. But this is kind of helping you to think through what you can write about in your CLS application. So what's your field of study? How can you relate to your language? What are your career goals? And how will you use your acquired cultural and language knowledge to contribute to your future field? So why don't you take just a couple minutes, read through this worksheet, jot down some ideas, and then we'll come back together. So take about 5 to 7 minutes just to do a little bit of writing, a little bit of brainstorming, and I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up. So I know we have a couple people still left. Access to document. Are you joining from your USC email?
I would try to, but it doesn't really have a spot to like enter my email. It's just joining
Okay.
from.
No worries. Okay, then what we'll do is scratch the link for right now. Let's just think about, so basically with CLS, go ahead and take a little bit of time to think about how CLS might connect to your future career. I'll put that in the chat. I put another question in the chat about what unique experiences and backgrounds do you bring to the program, and how will you represent the U.S. abroad? Let's go ahead and write down some thoughts about that. Take just a couple minutes, and I think we might share as a group if y'all are comfortable with that, since we are a smaller group.
Like, would a good connection to like my future career be like, I want to work in AI research, and a lot of research papers are published in Chinese?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, great connection. All right, and I'm putting the last couple of questions in the chat. So what coping skills do you rely on when things get tough, and what do you anticipate will be your biggest challenge? So go ahead and take another couple minutes to answer all those questions, then we'll come back together and happy to answer questions or help brainstorm. All right, finish up your thoughts. All right, so would anyone like to share how that process went for you? Did that help you kind of think through some things? Did anyone have a connection they wanted to share or a question they wanted to ask?
I'm not really sure how I'd like bring unique experiences and background. I kind of just had an average growing up life, and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what does your average look
suburban growing up, a nuclear family.
like? Hmm.
I was homeschooled. Would that play into it?
I would say so. Yeah. Were you in the like South, Northeast, Midwest?
Northeast, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what kinds of things, and especially thinking about like being at school in South Carolina, like what are some of the things that like surprised you when you came down here that were maybe some cultural differences that you hadn't thought
Um, everyone's like a lot politer. I
about?
know that's
Yeah.
stereotypical, but it also is true. Like, and I'm not really sure what else has surprised me per se.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel all that different, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. So being able to kind of make those connections. But yeah, talking about maybe it being homeschooled like might help with your CLS because it gave you like a work ethic to work at your own pace and to be self-motivated. That could be something. Um, Being from the Northeast, you're used to being more direct. So how does that relate to maybe some challenges you might find with learning Chinese, a language and a culture that tends to be more indirect? Things like that.
I'm also from the Mid-Atlantic to
There we go.
Northeast. I talked a little bit about how like I felt like I could represent kind of two different areas of the United States and that I'd gotten different perspectives and experienced a lot of different political beliefs between living in Maryland, where I'm from, versus moving to South Carolina.
Cool.
Great.
Those give me some ideas. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might even think, yeah, usually when I think about like trying to figure out what your own culture is, which can be kind of hard when you're kind of thinking about that. I was like, oh, what kind of holidays do you celebrate growing up? Like, what does a typical day look like? What is your family value? What do you value? What do you think of the concept of time or friendship? And you kind of get a little bit deeper in that, but really thinking about things that maybe um, those moments of surprise or confusion that you've experienced maybe when you visit other places or talk to people from different families, what's been something that struck you that usually points to like, oh, this is something that's a cultural difference, like what time you get to a party, what time you show up to work, what time you show up to school, like different things like that. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other thoughts? I know, Jared, you said you were interested in a couple of different languages. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I had my camera off for most of the time
Oh,
just
no
because I
worries.
was, yeah. So, I think Portuguese makes the most sense to me because I did take, I finished like the Spanish minor and I took some Portuguese courses and it's really interesting.
Mhm.
Um, but Hindi, was Hindi one of the ones that doesn't have
Mhm.
any requirements? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hindi and I forgot the other one that I mentioned that I was interested in, but
Arab.
Arabic as well, but I think there's a language requirement. But
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so let me just activate the motion sensor. Okay. So
Oh no, is it turning the lights off on you?
yeah, so Portuguese is really interesting and you know, Brazil is a country that's really fascinating to me for many reasons. I think um it just seems so like rich to me and fascinating. Like it has so many different types of people and it just seems like a one of a kind type of place and
Mhm.
also has some interesting sort of social dynamics that you really only see in like a handful of other countries, the United States being one, South Africa is probably another one.
Mhm.
And I think it would be great to practice like Portuguese there and Hindi. So my mother was born in India, and so she's not like her family doesn't speak Hindi, but Hindi is basically the like main language that Indian people speak. It's like the main language in all the Bollywood movies and
Mhm.
a lot of things like that. So I think that, you know, I never really learned Gujarati, which is what my mother speaks.
Mhm.
So as I'm like learning that on my own, I think that Hindi would also be a great way to sort of connect to the country of India in a totally new way and kind of like establishing my own sense of identity there you know, like creating it for myself. It wasn't exactly, you know, a language that I learned as a child. I'm kind of having to relearn it. So this would help me kind of reconnect in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do you see, so you said, so you have kind of personal interests in both of these countries. What are some of your like personal and professional goals for yourself?
Yeah. So I'm currently a medical student,
Oh, very cool.
and you know, a lot of I've had a number of global health experiences
Hmm.
in many different parts of the world, and so I do see myself staying in the global health space. And like something that's kind of an idea that's been kind of floating around in my head is this idea of being almost like a global health ambassador, you know, someone who can represent the United States, just because like the pandemic taught us, and really, you know, those of us in the world of public health understand how interconnected health challenges are. And so it's really important from a diplomacy sense that countries that maybe share similar health outcomes or that have shared interests are able to come together to develop strategies instead of, you know, every country having their own strategy. And so organizations like the World Health Organization are really cool to me. And I also have an interest in learning languages. And I think as far as diplomacy goes, it's important to be able to know different languages and being able to connect with other people. I think when you can speak someone's language, you really can um, know what they're like as a person, and there's a level of respect that it shows, and people will take you more seriously. I think the United States is often like an authority figure, but by showing, you know, the language, it kind of like is showing that you actually have respect and people are more willing to listen. So in the global health diplomacy world, I think that it would be super important to learn languages.
Awesome. So I would maybe think through when you're thinking about kind of which language might be the best for you, is thinking about those goals, thinking about the World Health Organization, thinking about like the patients that you've seen and where maybe a lot of the like where you've seen the need for languages. Because I'm even thinking like if you're looking for like global health, I mean, I would imagine like quite a few people speak Hindi, like almost billions. So thinking about like in terms of the impact of that, like would you be able to work with more patients in that area of the world, or would that be something where it could be like kind of a lingua franca for having conversations with a lot of people from the subcontinent, or is there like a specific like global health area that you're interested in, like epidemiology or public health? Is there a certain like particular condition that you're most concerned about, like, and how does that show up in Brazil and Latin America versus India, and maybe that might help you decide what would be kind of your way to go. Does that help?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I was wondering if I take like the India route, I think it would be a bit more like personal related to like family, and the Brazil route would probably be more about like my own interest and like, you know, in South America. Do you feel like it's applicants are stronger when they take the more personal route, or if they really more connected to like more strictly career?
I think in any case you want to balance like your personal reasons for doing it with kind of other ways that you would want to apply it. Because I mean, there are heritage speakers who will apply for CLS and receive it, but I think it's kind of about making those bigger connections.
Gotcha. Not
So
all your
that probably
eggs
wasn't
in
an
one
answer.
basket.
That
No,
wasn't.
I get what you're saying is like it can't just be one, like it has to be
I,
both if you have that personal connection.
yeah, I would say it would need to be both, and I feel like that's kind of with any language, is like both a personal interest and a professional interest is really kind of important, because I mean you have to be like interested in the language to want to learn it, and
Right.
especially learn it at this type of a level. And I would say if you're having like if you're going back and forth between the two, another really good way to kind of decide for yourself is to do like a coin flip test. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you basically take a coin and you decide like, oh, heads is Brazil and tails is India, and you flip it, and then you gauge how you react to what the answer is. So it doesn't matter what the answer is. So if you get tails and you're like, oh, that okay, I kind of wanted it to be heads, then that might say, oh, you might want to do Brazil more.
Gotcha.
kind of to help that. Or if you have enough time and you have the brain space, you can even write up both essays and see which one like sounds more compelling for you, because maybe having that written out will help you to see like, oh, like now that I've got my thoughts on paper, I can see where I'm really most interested in going. So,
Understood. Okay. And I want to be respectful of Isabel because I have
oh,
more
yeah,
questions, but if she has anything
sure.
else, she can say
Thank you.
something.
Yeah. She's just listening.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So like I've applied to some fellowships before, and like I totally understand about the narratives and things like that, but also I know when you want to also appeal to the sort of internal goals of the foundation. So
Mm.
when it comes to CLS, I imagine like Fulbright, they're really interested in sort of this, bridging relationships with two countries. And I was just wondering if there's any other themes or
Yeah.
main ideas that they look favorably upon. Not that I'm going to just say them because they want to hear, but I'm
Right.
just trying to think
Yeah.
about myself as a whole applicant. What do I need to emphasize more than other things?
Yeah, and that's actually something I don't have it pulled up, but that was something we talked about at a recent conference for National Fellowships folks, was again like how do you show that you're like reflecting the values of the organization without like necessarily like twisting yourself into like, oh, this is what I believe, right? Give me the money. That's not what we're trying to do. So I would maybe look at CLS and read over the website and see kind of where there's that natural resonance where you look at it and you're like, oh, I really think that like I feel really strongly about building mutual understanding and creating those relationships. And I think that's really important. Like that's how you can make those connections, is by looking around and seeing kind of what the ones are that you really connect with. Now I'm trying to think what was the other half of your question?
I mean, that the example that comes to mind is like I have a lot of travel experience, and so I'm
Okay.
wondering, is CLS looking to maybe support people who haven't had much, or should I basically maybe not mention every country I've been to? Like, would it be more helpful to sort of just
Yeah.
kind of just say what's relevant and not go into too much detail about that?
Well, I would say I don't think you have the space to say everything
Okay,
because
fair.
it's very short. So I would pick the couple most relevant things that you feel would be most relevant to explaining why you're interested in this language, this country, and how you're going to adapt this program. Maeve, any additional comments?
Yeah, just to chirp in real quick. In full transparency, CLS does have a policy where in a case of equal applicants, they will give priority to people who have not gone abroad before, but they do accept people who have gone abroad. Like two of my closest friends in the program were returned Peace Corps volunteers who had traveled extensively. But you are also required to disclose everywhere you have traveled. It'll be associated with your passport number, not necessarily elaborate on what you did in all those countries, but I do believe there's a portion of the application where you are supposed to list off all the places that you've been.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. So it's not like I'm gonna hide anything. They'll know everything. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the government. They know a lot.
they know everything. Yeah.
For good or ill, they know a lot.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say for one other thing? I've lost it. Anyways, I think I was going to say something about boron, but I'm not sure how that would interact with your medical studies, but worth looking into as well.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to connecting to the careers, I think like if this is a fellowship to do research or studying or something like directly, it would be easier to tie that connection. So I was just wondering, outside of how, learning a language and traveling to another country connect to my career, what would you say? And I guess, Maeve can also chip in when it comes to the skills that one gains that might just be like generally useful in any career. Are there any particular that you would say you really came away with or met a lot of CLS people come away with?
Yeah.
For me, like cross-cultural competency is kind of like a buzzword they use a lot. And something that I definitely think I came away with. For me, CLS was my first time going abroad, and so I learned a lot about it, and also being there for a semi-extended period of time, not anything extremely long, but it gave me a lot more understanding of the host culture and how people were living in my host country. As it relates to medicine, one of my program mates was a pre-med student at the time. When she filled out her application, she got kind of into specifics of, so she was from Houston. There's for some reason, a huge Azerbaijani speaking population in Houston. So she talked about how she wanted to increase access and things like that in her application. And I think that that was a really effective way to go about it.
Yeah, and I would say learning adaptability and flexibility is really something that you develop in an international setting in a way that's very different from anything that you can do domestically. And the ability to not only like to kind of manage that uncertainty and moments of discomfort and confusion, because you're always going to have those when you go abroad, but also being able to potentially recognize when things are maybe when there's a cultural element to things, and then also being able to respond to that cultural element because you have more experience with folks who operate in different ways and have different values and different approaches to things, like being able to notice like, oh, I think that the reason that my patient is like chronically late to everything, I don't think it's them. I think it might be because there might be a cultural thing at play. So how can we work together to kind of set those expectations and adjust things, or how can we work with the patient to like have better compliance with their care plan because of like maybe adapting dietary suggestions or something like that, and being able to kind of think in those ways that are really considering different factors that might be at play, and that would make, I hope, a more capable and competent physician. And then of course being able to speak to people in other languages, great too,
Right.
when
Gotcha.
you have the opportunity to do that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you very much. I just have one last question, I promise. When it comes to placement in the country, is it sort of random as far as where in the country, or for Portuguese, there's a couple of different Portuguese speaking countries, like some in Angola and Mozambique. So is it, how does the placement work?
So CLS will have designated programs and designated placements. So you're applying for the language, and then they kind of send you where they have decided you are going. So you don't necessarily get to express a preference to be like, oh, I would love to go to Angola, because they don't have a program there. But I would say if you're interested in that, if you're saying, okay, I'm learning Portuguese in Brazil, but I also see that potentially being a language that I can apply in other locations like Mozambique or Angola. So does that answer that question?
Definitely. Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh, and also just one thing on that, just for like the country that you're placed in, it's not like people will be placed in different parts of the country.
No.
You'll all be placed very close together, and most of the times it's a pretty metropolitan location.
Understood. Okay, wonderful. And no, this has been a lot of help. Definitely going to do my best to put an application together over the next month. Can you remind me your name? I just see it says National Fellowship.
Oh, sorry, I'm Heidi.
Heidi.
Yes, Heidi Bress. Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm in
You're
Greenville, so I'm not sure
nice.
how it works when it comes to accessing the previous applications, but do I have to come into the office? Would it be possible to send them?
So I can add you to our CLS team, a Microsoft team, and the resources should be in there.
Wonderful. Okay.
And I will share, so this is, I don't know why the spacing is weird, but this is our contact information.
Okay.
If you want to make an appointment with our team, you can schedule through either Navigate for undergraduates, or since you're both graduate students, you can email me directly, or we actually have on our, now it's gone. Anyways, so
Once I email you,
sorry?
Once I email you, will you be able to, or do I just look it up? Will you be able to, oh my goodness. Will you be able to send me the link to the individual for the Project Go? Because I have a different contact. I'm sure like,
Yes, so can you see my screen?
yes, I can.
Okay. So this is the Connect with a Peer Mentor. So this is where you can request a coffee chat to meet with Maeve or another of our peer mentors. But if you scroll down, so Ryan, he is in ROTC. So this is Ryan. So if you schedule a coffee chat with him, he's the person who did the Project Go. And he did it twice for Arabic. So that's a
what ROTC program is he in? Do you know?
Sorry?
What ROTC? No, okay. Okay.
I do not.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then back to your question about how to make an appointment as a
I'm gonna head on
as
now.
a
Thank you all so much.
graduate student. All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Oh my gosh, make an appointment. There we go. I can't navigate my website. Anyways, but this is where you can find the link for graduate students. And so that will take you to a place where you can make an appointment. All right, did everybody leave?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Thanks,
Okay.
Heidi. And thanks again for sending me the